First up, for the second time in living memory, there is an election recount crisis in the state of Florida tonight. Just last week, as you'll remember, Republicans Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis defeated Democrats Bill Nelson and Andrew Gillum in the Senate and gubernatorial races there. The results seemed to be conclusive at the time. They were reported on this and every other news channel on election night last Tuesday. And yet, just 6 days later, it is very possible that both those Democrats will win the seats, the ones that just the other day they had lost. How did that happen exactly? Well, thousands of new and uncounted ballots appeared in Florida, mostly in Democratic-leaning counties. And those ballots changed the results sufficiently to trigger a statewide recount. That recount is underway right now. The process so far is not inspiring confidence in the system. President Trump has complained about it, as have plenty of other people, including some journalists and Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. But it turns out that complaining about this is not allowed. So to restate the rules, in case you've forgotten, when a Republican wins an election, it is fine to question the legitimacy of the process. Democrats have been doing that since the very day Trump was elected 2 years ago. That is patriotic. It's your duty. But when the Democratic Party's power is at stake, raising any question at all about the process is wrong. Indeed, it's nothing less than the road to dictatorship. Watch.
He's basically trying to undermine at every turn. It's not just Florida. He weighed in on Arizona. He's weighed in on other races. He's undermining the legitimacy of elections.
Where he doesn't like the results.
Where he doesn't like the results. And that is a hallmark of a failing democracy, of someone moving towards an authoritarian.
He's authoritarian, scream the authoritarians. Meanwhile, defending the results of elections that have already been called is now the same as overturning elections. Listen to incoming House Speaker Nancy Pelosi explain how this works.
The president has been saying that there's election fraud in Florida. What do you think is happening in Broward County?
My experience with the president is any time he charges somebody with something, he's just projecting what he might have done himself. We are not engaged.
Election fraud?
Well, obstruction, suppression of the vote.
Suppression. Nancy Pelosi did not use that word accidentally. The term is meant to evoke images of a darker time in American history, a time of night riders and burning crosses, a time very few living Americans remember personally, but that lives in our collective memory. This kind of talk can be politically useful. That's why they do it. That's why it's a theme on the left, in case you haven't noticed. In Broward County, for example, ballot counting is overseen by a woman called Brenda Snipes. Snipes was previously caught illegally destroying ballots. This time around, she's apparently mixed invalid provisional ballots with valid ones. That sounds bad. But don't dare criticize Snipes for the way she does her job. According to MSNBC, the only relevant fact about Brenda Snipes is the color of her skin. Watch.
Here is the way they are treating Brenda Snipes, who is the longtime election supervisor there, who, by the way, is an older black woman in the Deep South. Okay, just keep that in mind as you watch this video.
If you look at the person, in this case a woman, involved, she has had a horrible history.
So in case you're wondering what demagoguery looks like, you just saw it. But why now? Why are they doing this now? Democrats are acting like they've been robbed of power somehow. And yet in elections just last week that all of us saw, Democrats gained power. They retook the House of Representatives after 8 years. They added several governorships. They nearly broke even in the Senate. That was not enough, though. They want more, and they will use any means necessary to get it. In Palm Beach County, the county canvassing board disqualified a vote because it was cast by a non-citizen. Non-citizens are not allowed to vote in federal elections. It is illegal. It also never happens in this country, ever. We're told that again and again, and anyone who disagrees is racist. But in this case, it actually did happen. Nobody disputes that. The Democrats' response to this happening? Attorneys for Gillum and Nelson said the vote should not be disqualified. They objected to the disqualification because the only thing that matters to them in the end is winning. It's easy to find yourself thinking like this if you believe politics is holy war. To a religious extremist, an election is not a contest between fellow Americans who disagree on policy. It's an existential battle between good and evil. Evil must be vanquished at all costs, no matter what. Kirsten Gillibrand has reached this conclusion. Now, Senator Gillibrand is not an obvious candidate for America's leading moral voice. She was a longtime friend and defender of Harvey Weinstein's, for example. But listen to her now, preaching like it's the last Sunday in Lent.
Are you staying in the Senate, or are you going to run for president?
I've been thinking about it because, as we said earlier, what President Trump has been putting into this country is so disturbing, so divisive, so dark, that I believe that I've been called to fight as hard as I possibly can to restore that moral integrity, that moral decency.
That sounds like a yes.
So I'm thinking about it.
Moral integrity, moral decency. That's what Democrats are telling you they are defending. And if you think about it for a minute, that is worrisome. People who know how deeply flawed they are tend not to overreach. They have humility. But when you're a holy warrior on a mission from God, what won't you do?